Trash Talk with Count Binface is sponsored by Recyclone Lasers. Safety guaranteed, or your body back.
Independent candidate Count Binface isn't new to the election campaign. Here's his pitch.
It's not a traditional general election declaration with cheers and Count Binface.
The first person in British political history to win successive victories over Count Binface.
Count Binface was ahead of Britain first.
Count Binface for Mayor of London, 24,200.
Binhead, bucket face, bucket head.
I feel I've been on an acid trip for the last 5 or 10 minutes.
Hello, welcome to Trash Talk with me, Count Binface. Who is Count Binface? As if you need to ask, but I am the intergalactic space warrior, leader of the Recyclons on planet Sigma 9, big fan of CFAX, and part-time politician on Earth. And that's what brought me back to your strange little planet, because no sooner than I won 24,260 votes in the London mayoral election, defeating the fascists of Britain first, than good old Rishi Sunak has detonated his own premiership and called a general election for July 2024. And I fancy a bit of the action. I mean, he's called the election for July the 4th. Bindependence Day. It's like he's writing my stuff for me. And with this brand new podcast, listeners, you'll be able to follow the next step in my intergalactic political journey. If I stand in the election, where I choose to stand in the election, and all the stuff I get up to between now and polling day. Of course, the good news is, in the United Kingdom, you don't have to be a candidate to get major airtime. Just look at Nigel Farage, popping up again on Question Time, despite saying he is not standing in the election. I literally have a greater democratic mandate than Nigel to have a mouthpiece in your media. So here I am, making it for myself. And in this brand new show, listeners, I have a treat for you. My ongoing mission is to meet interesting earthlings from all kinds of walks of life and have a wonderful chinwag with them. Well, I don't have a chin, but you take my meaning. And I'm kicking off with an absolute belter. I've had a chat with a comedian, a historian, a drummer, and an ex-parliamentary candidate all rolled into one. Yes, it's the fantastic Al Murray, who in 2015 stood against Nigel Farage for the seat of South Thanet in the general election. I sat down and chatted all kinds of stuff with Al, including how his fascinating genealogy led to an unfortunate link with David Cameron. Get a load of this.
It's a humbling honour and a privilege to actually speak. It's very rare you get to speak to someone you voted for. You know, the entire democratic process obviously depends on, in a way, on distance and trust and all these sort of things. But to actually clap eyeballs and speak to the person you vote for in a London mayoral election is quite something. It's very special.
Well, the honour is mine, as I say, the privilege to have your vote. You're one of the vanguard 24,260, Al, who've seen sense. But, the other politicians, Sadiq and that lot, they're supposed to be reachable. And isn't there an irony that the one you can reach out to is the intergalactic space warrior? I think that speaks volumes.
It certainly does. I mean, to have to speak to you via this subspace comms link-up, that's the most extraordinary. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Millions of people voted for Sadiq Khan, and they'll never get a chance for a one-to-one like this. So, I think it's all part of your service as well. It's very strong.
First thing I want to say, not only just how the devil are you, but tell us, where are you right now?
I'm in the south of France, about half an hour from the Pyrenees, literally in the middle of nowhere, for half term. Although, interestingly, here's a little bit of gossip, on the same flight as us yesterday to Toulouse was Kemi Badenoch and her family. So
You're
clearly,
kidding. That's a great scoop. So she really is getting stuck into the election campaign.
I mean, the impression that Sunak is on his own in this is very much underlined by she's a frontline possible leadership candidate and she's buggered off. It's very strong.
We're going to have to go some just to top that little bit of news nugget. I think we're going to get coverage for that.
I just want to emphasise, I'm not on holiday with her, by the way. I'm not
Yes, that's very needs to be said. Absolutely. You're not in the sort of the lion's den planning the next move.
No.
On which note, I wondered if your visit to France was in any way connected to, of course, the D-Day commemorations going on.
I'll be back in France next week for that. So I have some shows at the weekend this weekend in England, and then I'm back for the D-Day stuff next week. And I was actually there the week before last filming some D-Day things as well. So I'm full of French bread right now. I'm basically 90% French bread.
Croissants?
It's the pan flute for me. I just can't eat. And just this morning, I went down to the village shop and she offered me, I asked for a pan flute and she offered me like a thing that looked like a sourdough loaf with a sprinkling of flour. And I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, they've got here, have they? The artisanal bakers. Like, give me a classique. I've come here for French bread, not chewy sourdough from Shoreditch. I mean, the invasion continues.
You just want a standard flute, not a James Galway.
Exactly.
Yes. No, I know how you feel. Well, I think we have to give you some congratulations, Al. From what you described, somehow you are managing to make it to and from across the English Channel without too much trouble post-Brexit. I mean, that in itself is an achievement.
Well, yes. I mean, at Toulouse, they are very much geared to lots of British people coming. So they're pretty well set for... It's a small airport, so they seem to be able to handle all the Brits fleeing the election. So, yeah, and then I took the ferry to Normandy the week before last. That was actually very civilised. I mean, you do wonder, there was a singer at like midnight on the way back who did a 45-minute set on the ferry, on the Weestrom to Portsmouth ferry. And you kind of think, I'd fire my agent if I was doing that.
Well, had they been hired or had they just chosen to sing?
No, they were billed and everything. So,
oh my God! Wow.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I want to ask you about the election and one thing as a historian, I'm sure you're as amused as I was that Richard Tice, the Reform UK leader, decided to have that graph talking about ferries to Normandy, suggesting that there was zero immigration in 1066.
Oh dear. I mean, I don't know where to begin with. Quite clearly, he wants to be influential, doesn't he? And he's thinking, well, where's the space? Where's the gap? And good luck to him in that. But you can't ignore a Norman invasion. And also, I mean, aside from there was also a Viking invasion that year. I mean, it's not just the Normans, it's everybody. Because basically, it's the greatest country in the world. Everyone wants a piece of the action.
Not just every country, every planet wants a piece of you guys. We can come on to that in a moment, but we're speaking about a week into the general election campaign.
Yeah.
Now, you're a comedian, a very esteemed one, so I thought you're the perfect person to ask about, how things have started for Rishi. What is your take on it?
Well, I mean, I'm an impulsive person, so in many ways it's nice to see someone embrace their impulsiveness. I also like to thank him, actually, because... in my current touring show, I've got a bit about national service because there was some talk about national service in sort of January when I was writing the show, and it had got that big bit of material was beginning to sort of it was beginning to decline. You could feel the fade coming on the topicality of the joke, and he's put it back absolutely centre stage. So I've got to thank him for that. But I mean, it's not. It doesn't seem to be going at all well, and it's this quadruple lock on the pension thing, where you think, look. I'm 56, but I'm thinking, throw me a bone, right?
Yes, it's funny you say, and they're reporting it as the quadruple lock.
Yeah,
and yet, of course, the Conservatives are promoting it as the triple lock plus.
Yes,
because I'm pretty sure they have figured that most people haven't heard of the word quadruple, so they thought we'll call it the old triple lock plus, which sounds a little bit George Orwell to me.
Their big worry is the next one is quintuple, and then they've lost everybody. No one knows what a quintuple lock would be, and then you're into sort of maths nerd language, which is I think probably Rishi's home patch actually, but they don't want to end up on a sextuple lock.
Lock inflation. you talk about whether he did it as a surprise or not. I can only come up with two possibilities. One is that he's genuinely had enough.
Yeah.
A lot of the commentators are saying, he just can't wait to sod off to California, which is hard to deny. Or if he's honestly thought literally the only tool left in his bag was the element of surprise, And
Yeah,
so he
I
thought
think-
he'd surprise his entire cabinet, the entire country, by thinking, I'll give it a go. And of course, he's a Star Wars fan. And
Yeah.
I imagine he thinks he's the Millennium Falcon turning around to attack a Star Destroyer.
No.
Except that he's going to get blown to smithereens.
No, he's Grand Moff Tarkin, is the truth. That's the thing
Yes.
you have to accept.
Yes, he's not evacuating in his moment of triumph, that's for sure.
Well, I think he might be when it comes to it.
Indeed,
I mean, the thing is, every time I see him, I think, you hate this job. I know you wanted this job, but you hate this job. He seems to hate it even more than Gordon Brown did, who quite clearly loathed being Prime Minister, even though it was everything he'd ever set his heart on. There's a bit of me that thinks we should vote him back in to teach him a lesson. He's not talking about national service like my dad did, but whatever it is they're talking about, imagine having to try and make that work. I almost feel he deserves it for the way things have been going the last few years.
Well, I was going to come onto this and ask you about national service, both from your comedic and indeed sort of history background. I mean,
yes.
Your view is similar to mine. Maybe not the best thought through plan, especially if you haven't briefed your own people on how you're going to run it.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, good luck with it. I mean, certainly, if they are talking about military national service, then obviously the last thing the army want is lots of people who don't want to be in the army. They're having a difficult enough time as it is being sort of shrunk down anyway. And they've got a massive problem with retention and people because there's no possibility of career advancements because it's so small and the money's crap and the accommodation's horrible and all those things. Imagine then adding a whole cohort of kids who are just not interested in being in it. I mean, you know. Also, the other reason we got rid of national service in the first place is because of nuclear weapons.
Well, they're going well, aren't they? That doesn't work either.
Well, none of it works. This is the truth. But I mean, it's a truly amazing policy. And what they are good at is grabbing everyone's attention. Make no mistake, we're all talking about it. And there's a whole load of people, there's a point of view on Twitter that says, you see, they're playing 3D chess because they've got you talking about their policy. But as far as I can work out, everyone's talking about what a terrible idea it is.
The 3D chess is that they needed to come up with something, literally anything, to stop everyone talking about how stupid he looked in the rain.
Yes.
While that bloke played things that can only get better. And to that extent, it has worked.
Yes.
Because he's managed to trump himself.
Yeah, he's cut through. That's what they talk about, isn't it? Cutting through.
Yes, it's a dead cat in military fatigues. You mentioned the military, I mean, and how, underfunded they are. Apparently, this national service thing is going to cost £2.5 billion. And far be it from me, as someone with his own army, to tell you what to do. But wouldn't that be better spent on some actual soldiers and some kit that works properly? I'm just putting it out there.
We don't have particle cannons like you do. So, I mean, maybe we could buy some hardware off you, Count.
Well, that is one of my policies, is stop selling guns to repressive regimes and start buying lasers from Count Binface. Easy peasy.
Trash Talk with Count Binface is supported by Southwest Water's new digital currency, Shitcoin, putting the crypto into crypto spiridium.
We've got something in common. We might be from across the stars, but we've actually both stood in British general elections.
Yes.
As what is sometimes rather disparagingly called novelty candidates. Could you give us some reminiscences on your time on the stump?
The glorious campaign of 2015, when 318 people rallied to my cause, which is actually a Kabbalic number. It's in the Bible. There's one of the sort of tribes of Israel story. There's a thing where 318 people rally to, I can't remember which prophet's stand. So it's a number loaded with significance, right? That's the first thing. That's what you're looking for. I ran in South Thanet against Craig McKinley, who's been in the papers recently, poor sod with his sepsis. A guy called Will Scobie, who was the Labour candidate, and then Nigel Farage from the UKIP, as they were called at the time. It was a tremendous adventure into discovering how partisan people are, was the main thing. There was a whole slice of people who simply couldn't cope with the idea that I might be doing it for a laugh. And I was accused of accepting EU money, of being paid by the BBC to do it, which wasn't true either. But the best of all was the conspiracy theory about me being David Cameron's cousin and how he put me up to it.
How did that happen?
Well, I have an esteemed ancestor, William Thackeray, the guy who wrote Vanity Fair, right?
Ah, yes.
And he's my three great-grandfather on my mother's side, right? But it doesn't mean a thing, right? But there's a genealogy website, and they do that thing where they'll go, look, Princess Diana was Barack Obama's cousin. They'll go far enough back and they'll connect people as a way of getting you to log onto their site and then look into your ancestry.
That's what they found out, that Danny Dyer was connected to a king, except it's so far back that apparently everyone in the entire country.
We all are. It's Charlemagne. It's everybody. Yeah. You and Yoda somewhere back in, your family.
That's a rumour, and I deny everything about it.
Anyway, the point is, someone in Thackeray's family married someone in Cameron's family, like more than 200 years ago. And that on their website was like, look at David Cameron's unlikely cousin, Al Murray. And they kept on calling me the pub landlord and all that sort of thing. Well, yeah, lads, but no. And that then, you leave that in a time of a general election. I kept being called an Islington lovey and all that. And I don't live in Islington. I live in West London. I live in Chiswick.
But do you drink chai lattes and eat quinoa?
No. Yeah. I can't bear quinoa. It's a taste of disappointment. Anyway, you leave that long enough, that connection, that family connection, and it turned into him being my first cousin, and that he had put me up to running in South Thanet in the election, and that I was a Tory party sort of distraction exercise, dead cat, to distract people from voting for Farage. And things have got more mad since. That's the thing. It's 9 years ago now. And at the time, I remember thinking the way people are looking at this is really, really mad. But now, I mean, conspiratorial thinking is entirely commonplace in how people view stuff across the board, left and right, which is just incredibly dispiriting, I think. Really, really tedious.
That's one of my reasons why the internet should be replaced with CFAX, you see. It would solve it in one fell swoop, Al. There was no one on CFAX saying that you were related to Cameron, I can tell you that. And it had the cricket scores. So what more could you want?
Yeah.
Well, let's just talk about 1 second about standing. Do you feel, because when I stand, one of the wonders of it is just the simple fact that you can.
Yeah.
That the British democracy has this unique ability for anyone, in any guise, to stand and express their freedom. And did you enjoy sort of celebrating and sort of cherishing that?
Absolutely. That was a serious answer. The reason I did it was Russell Brand saying, don't vote. It doesn't make any difference. Why bother? And he'd said that the autumn before. And I don't have anything like the platform he had. But that just seemed like a wildly, madly stupid thing to say. And I thought, well, what can I do rather than piously say, well, please vote, like one of those people on Twitter who says, please make sure you're going to vote. Do something, stand, show that it's there to be taken part in. And so that was the big idea, like to take part, to join in. I ring my manager and he's like, brilliant idea. Yeah, fantastic. And also I had an eye to the fact that it would save me a load of money in marketing, if I'm bald with you. It was like a way of saying to people, hello, I'm still here, without having to spend tons of money on adverts and all that sort of thing. And in that respect, I'm not the first person to use the electoral system for publicity either. I think one of the really interesting things is Farage, is, to pick a name in that hat, has carefully crafted an outsider image by picking elections he knows he's going to lose. And, and hats off to him, because I know he loses a lot, but he's always taken part. And the point is taking part. And I found it, I loved it. And we went to the council and you signed the thing. They were excited about the prospect of people bringing attention to the election and how important it was. My mind was blown by how simple it was and how it's completely open. And that is super cool.
It really is. And I always say to people that that's the wonder, is if you have got a platform that you want to stand on, and it's not just about the winning. I'm sure you're the same. I've met independent candidates. They've had a cause, they stand and they're able to express themselves. Yeah. And also the councils, as you say, are so friendly. I think we can give a big up to all the returning officers, the council staff. They do a fantastic job. Nobody ever really thanks them. And they are so welcoming. It's fantastic. Yeah. That's what makes Britain great.
Yeah, and the Count is a really great thing to be at. It's a really cool, level place. All the candidates are treated with the same degree of seriousness and respect, if that's what they want. I was mucking about, but, our country has all its tangles around class, but this felt like a thing where you could, the door's open, you just walk in. It's amazing.
Yes, exactly. Well, I've got something lovely to share with you. You mentioned 318 as a magic number. Well, when I stood against Boris Johnson, I scored 69, Al.
Oh.
I experienced a surprising 69 with Boris Johnson in an Uxbridge sports hall at 3 a.m. on Friday the 13th. I'd love to say I'm the first life form to experience that, but with Boris, you just don't know. You can't be sure. Back onto your old sparring partner, Nigel Farage. He's decided not to stand in this election, hasn't he?
I know.
What do you make of that?
He knows there's a comet coming electorally, and there's just nothing to be gained from joining in this time. There's no way of splitting the right and having any influence over the outcome.
Interestingly, of course, UKIP still exists without him in another form. I mean, they're doing so well that I've beaten them twice. That tells you how well they're doing, which I'm very proud of.
I mean, I think maybe we were joking about Kemi earlier on. I mean, there's going to be a whole lot of high-profile Tories who want no part in this defeat. And Sunak, trying to make the campaign presidential, perhaps, gets a load of people off the hook because they can go, well, he did that. It's nothing to do with me. This outcome's nothing to do with me. And truth is, anything can happen. Because when you look at Boris's majority in December 2019, on the podcast we do, the Second World War podcast I do, me and James Holland, we have ways of making you talk. We have been using the 2019 election as a way of thinking about the time span of the Second World War. So Second World War starts at the end of 1939, right? So the end of 2019 is when Boris wins that election. How long ago does that feel now? The gap between D-Day and Dunkirk is 4 years. If you think of 4 years as not very long, it's an extraordinary achievement that the British manage in 4 years. It's boggling.
And maybe the Americans and the Russians as well.
Well, yeah, but it's boggling. I mean, the defeat the British Army suffers in 1940 in France is the kind of thing that would finish off most organisations permanently. You know what I mean, right? And yet they somehow go, all right, try again. They have 2 more disastrous years, and then they figure out what to do. And so we've been looking at it in terms of that amount of time, and sometimes 2019, 4 years ago, 2020 doesn't seem that long ago. And other times it seems like an eon. It seems like the longest time. And you think of the majority that Johnson had, 80 strong. I mean, a proper landslide in 2019. The mess they're in only 4 and a bit years later, I think is amazing and shows that you've no idea what's around the corner. And Starmer might win, a 130 seat majority. We don't know. But what's around the corner from him, we have no idea.
The United States is a perfect example of that. I think after George W. Bush, people sort of breathed a sigh of relief when Obama came in, and they thought, okay, the adults are in the room again. Yeah. And look what came after that. So,
well, yeah, and as much as a reaction to Obama as to anything else. He should never have done those jokes about Trump at that press dinner. That's my butterfly's wing. If he'd not done those gags about Trump, none of that would have happened.
Look, before you go, just tell us all, you're doing your podcast.
Yes.
We have Ways of Making You Talk, which is a brilliant name. And if I'm right, you're even doing a festival this summer. Just tell us about that and where people can go and see you.
We have a festival called We Have Ways Fest, and the site is wehavewaysfest.co.uk. And it's a weekend of authors, historians, and it's all around, it's about the Second World War. Although with this year, we do have a couple of what we call wrong war talks, where people are talking about other stuff. But it's academics, authors, panels, it's seminars, it's stuff about 1944 mainly because it's the 80th. We've loads of tanks, hardware there so people can have a look at the stuff and get their hands on it. And we've got a very, very agreeable beer tent. And it's the weekend of the 19th to the 21st of July. There's camping and it's at next door to Silverstone, a place called Black Pit Brewery. If you're interested in history and you want some brain food and really agreeable company, and I know there's lots of people who are interested in the Second World War, but when they talk about it to other people, those other people glaze over. This is an opportunity to not meet a single glazer over when it comes to the subject of the Second World War, which I know a lot of people are really fascinated in. We Have Ways Fest, 19th to the 21st of July. We'll see you there. There you go. There's the plug.
That's fantastic. I mean, honestly, that does sound like a wonderful weekend. Educational and entertainment. Lord Reith would be proud. And have a lovely time in France. Give our regards to Kemi.
I shall.
And hopefully see you soon.
Thanks very much, Your Excellency.
Well, listeners, whatever planet you're on, whether it's Sigma 9, Earth, or anywhere else in the cosmos, I hope you enjoyed listening to that interview as much as I enjoyed chatting to Al. He's a fantastic, funny man with all kinds of interests, and it was a real treat to have him on the pod. And don't fear, because I've got plenty more exciting guests lined up for the weeks ahead. And the next episode of Trash Talk will drop next Tuesday. So look out for that. Subscribe, follow, whatever the correct terminology is. Give it 5 stars, the whole shebang. You know what to do, guys. But before I sign off for this opening episode, I asked my followers on the social media platform known as Twitter, because we all still call it that, don't we? If anyone had any questions they'd like me to answer. And here are a few of my favourites so far. Satan McBastard, I'm assuming that's not his real name, asked me, if you were ever to replace the England Lions, would you choose llamas or alpacas? Well, as long as I can replace the 3 lions with 11, I would happily pick llamas or alpacas. I think that would be an interesting fight, and I'd like to see it. White Horse Hill asked, why does an extraterrestrial with a CFAX fixation make more sense than most of those standing for election in 2024? Good question. I think we're going to find out a lot more about that in the coming weeks. And finally for now, Bob Rankin asked, what is harder, making the Kessel run in 12 or fewer parsecs, or B, buying a cheaper croissant in London from a high street chain coffee shop? Well, I would say the Kessel Run because it's hard to do it in a unit of measurement which is actually distance rather than time. George, what were you thinking, mate? But actually, even that pales in comparison to trying to buy a cheap croissant in London. Until, of course, I am elected when all will be made fair. Vote Binface. If you've got any questions, you can send them in to me using the hashtag AskBinface. You can find me on all the usual social media platforms and on the web. I now also have a lovely Substack, accountbinface.substack.com, and you can find me pretty much everywhere on your planet because that's what politicians do. Unless they're Tory ministers, when of course they've pissed off on holiday. Well, that just about wraps things up for this episode. See you next time. And remember, you must register to vote, because that's the only way you can make your vote count.
Just to finish off with, I want to ask you, I'm going to ask all my guests, what's your dream policy? If I could put one thing in my manifesto, is there one thing that you think, that would make Britain or the planet better? What would come into your mind?
It's a 2-part policy. This is a thing that the pub landlord had in 2015, which is free dogs.
Love it.
But hanging for people who don't pick up their dog shit.
Wow. Okay. And do you stand by that, or is that the landlord's policy?
I think he's the free dogs and I'm the hanging for people who don't pick up their dog shit.
There we are. Glad we clarified that. And my last question is simply, this podcast goes out not just to Earth, but across the omniverse to my folks back on Sigma 9. So if you could have one message as a human to the rest of space about your planet, whether it's a warning or a hello, a greeting, what would be your message you'd put on a space probe for us? What would you say to us?
We come in peace, shoot to kill.
Sounds perfect. That needs to be in Latin, I think. And
Yes,
in all
but
languages.
yes, exactly. In Latin with the naked Vitruvian man with his balls out. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely.